Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the Ask Me Anything about the EODF masterclass that we prepared to answer all the questions that I gathered and questions that you as participants have, and you can put in the comments. So first of all, I'm Lilian, an EODF board member. I lead our practitioner growth pillar, which is where this masterclass sits. I'm going to be joined by two faculty members who will be teaching the upcoming masterclass that starts in January. It's Paul Tolchinsky and Anissa Oukhiar, and I'm going to introduce each of them. Paul has over 40 years, I believe, of experience designing everything from factories to global business. He's co-founder of EODF, if that is correct, and also an author of Whole Scale Change, and he's a globally recognized org design consultant. Anissa is also an org design consultant with a decade of experience. She's passionate about collaboration and community. And both of them make the best match for this upcoming masterclass. So I have prepared a list of questions, different categories. But before we jump in, anything else that you'd like to add, Paul or Anissa?
Ladies before gentlemen.
No, I'm just very excited. I think we're going to have loads of fun. I think you and I, well, actually the three of us, we will also learn loads in the masterclass, because it's not just us teaching, it's also us learning about people's experiences, case studies.
True.
So I'm very excited.
True, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the only other thing I would add is I am mostly retired, as you know, as many people probably who are listening in know. And Lillian approached me about doing this. And my first reaction was, I'm retired. But then she said, well, maybe you would do it with Anissa. And that opened up the possibilities in a big way. And so I'm looking forward to it, because we've done lots of things together, but we've never done a masterclass together. So
yeah, which is wild when we think about it, actually.
Right.
But yeah,
I'm glad you said yes, Paul, even though you are retired.
yeah.
It's exciting. So let's jump in. Let me ask you the first question, Paul. How is this masterclass structured? You've taught this masterclass before, you know it like the palm of your hand. Tell us a little bit about the end-to-end.
Yeah, I mean, when we started designing this, we designed one module at a time. And so the masterclass has evolved over the years from one module, which was really just simply introducing the concept of organization design, because in some cultures it's not a term that people are familiar with and that they've heard. And so we began with what we call thinking design. And so what does it mean? How does one imagine it? Everything from ideo design to product design to the conscious creation of organizations. And so the masterclass begins with an exploration of, when we hear the term, what does it really mean? How does it resonate for us in some way? And then the second module is we jump into it. I mean, we talk about doing design. I mean, it is, the course is end to end, but design isn't end to end. Begins with some scoping and some conversations with the leaders or the executives, and ends with a fully implemented and embraced new set of design solutions. Right? And so we talk about doing design. What does it actually mean to do design? We talk about the process of design, the steps, the questions that get asked. We talk a little bit about the templates and the tools that get used. So module 2 is a deeper dive into what exactly are we doing when we're doing design. Module 3 is making it real. And the making it real, I love the title for it, because people kept saying, well, can we apply it? How do we apply this? And so module 3 is really the application. It's doing design making it real by working on cases, whether it's cases Anissa and I bring, cases that the participants bring. We prefer the ones they bring to the ones we bring. But it's a, let's get our hands dirty and actually have some of the deliberations that you would have real time in a real design process and methodology. The last module is, I call it embedded, right? Embedding the design. It's living the new. How do you transition? And how do you sustain whatever you've created? And so how do you ensure that it's in the hearts and the minds of the people who will have to make it happen? How do you continually renew, reinvent? Right? Whatever you create today and implement today is probably outdated by tomorrow. And so it's an ongoing deliberative process. So we start with thinking, we go to doing, we make it real with cases, and we talk about how you embed it and sustain it and live it long term.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that's the end-to-end approach that we take at this masterclass. And I'm going to ask Anissa about the capabilities that participants typically gain by the end of the program. Can you talk about that?
Well, let me drop a little bomb, and that is, people typically think like, oh, I'm going to do a masterclass, so I'll be the master afterwards, and I'll know everything about this particular topic. And in the spirit of keeping it real, that's a no, right? Because the point of it being called a masterclass is like people who do this day in and out, they sort of, share their wisdom, but equally try to sort of share how you can apply that. Now, what does that mean for you as a participant? Because there's probably, although we don't know yet who is going to be part of this cohort, but I can guarantee the listeners now, the viewers now, that there is going to be such a wealth of wisdom in that cohort, in that group. Just that safe space and tapping into each other's experiences and views, and so the point of the masterclass is that wealth of wisdom in that group in and of itself is already invaluable in terms of what you get from it. So that's one thing. The second thing is actually linked to what Paul said. So I'm not going to repeat what he said because he outlined all the modules. And I think the setup of the modules is also that you go on a psychological journey of starting perhaps a bit theoretical, but immediately trying to apply it, and also reflecting not just overnight, but also over a series of weeks as you do your work day to day, to sort of reflect and sit with, oh, actually, this is what came up in the masterclass. This was the pre-work for the next session of the module. This is kind of what happened at work, and like applying it as we speak, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of value in that as well, beyond the content that we will share. But to some people, especially if you're doing this work, to some people it won't be extremely revolutionary or new, especially if you're well read in this space, but it will be a good reminder. And there's something humbling about that, because the real value sits in the wisdom that comes from everyone in that room, and tapping onto how can we apply this, how can we actually do the org design, the how of it, how can we do that better, instead of just sticking with, well, what is it? We kind of, like most people already know what it kind of is. We of course need to level set, but the real value sits in the how. So I think that's what people will get.
Yeah, and learning never ends, right? So the more you know, the more you find out that you don't know. So that's kind of
100%, and it's so humbling.
Exactly. But the one thing I would add, Anissa, to what you said is the how-to. The way this masterclass is designed, it's really, we don't preach one method or one way of doing design. There's 100 different ways of doing design, and we try to navigate honoring all of those different approaches, so that when you leave this masterclass, you leave with a set of possibilities. You're in front of a client and they want to do X. Well, how would you do it that way? Or they want to do Y. Well, how would you respond to that, right? And so that's the other part of, I think, what Anissa is saying is you'll get more of a way of thinking, and you'll get a little bit of practice with the tools.
Yeah, I love that addition, Paul. I was going to ask you more about the methods, or whether there was a school of thought particularly that we followed. And you already started saying, no, we are like school of thought agnostic.
Right.
Anything else that you would add to that?
I mean, the foundation of the course is a generic design process. And then, here's what you would do. And the reality is, in every client situation, you do it different. So we role play and have fun with the leader says they don't want to do it the way you want to do it. How would you make the case for the step that you believe is important, right? And how do you practice that in some way? And so it's the idea of the course is that you become conversant in design, and you don't leave with a cookbook, but you leave with a pot full of ideas and ways of imagining that you can customize to your situation, right? I think that's, most of the other courses that are out there preach a particular point of view or a particular perspective, or espouse a particular position. Self-managed teams is the only way to go. But the reality is that's not always true, and so while we might honor and believe that's something that we would aspire to, that's not what we're preaching. We're preaching that solution should emerge from a conversation about design in the client system. If they choose that, then we should help them figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, exactly. And follow up for you, Anissa.
Can I
You
just
were
build on
talking.
that? Sorry. Can I just build on one thing
Yeah.
on that? Because it just actually came to my mind. Back to the question you initially asked me. Think also with what Paul said. There is a thing of fine-tuning and preparing and further polishing contracting skills, especially and contracting is not just for external consultants. So I'm also talking towards all the listeners that are internal practitioners, because you're constantly also internally contracting with your colleagues and different stakeholders. And so once you know the nuances better, and the approach is associated with the nuances in the different situations, you will be able to be more effective in contracting, because you'll be able to really be super clear. Okay, actually, these are the risks associated with this. So I need to make sure I have this and this and this in place if we go down the self-management route or whatever we decide to do. So I think it also helps with the contracting internally and externally both. Yeah.
And okay, the follow-up question that I had for you was about the participants. What's the background? And you already mentioned right now there are external and in-house practitioners. Can you talk a little bit more about what kind of participants benefit from this class?
Yeah. So definitely anyone who is keen to learn more about how can you basically understand the way that you can shape an organization through changes. So you can literally be I'm this is just random, right? You don't have to be an org design manager per se, or an org design consultant. You can also be an engineer, for example, who's just interested, like, hey, I have a project, I need to go from A to B, and people need to get along on that journey with me, because otherwise my whole solution is otherwise it won't be a solution fit for the problem I'm trying to solve. And so we welcome people from different backgrounds. And in fact, that's part of the wisdom in the group as well, that it really brings multidisciplinary thinking. So don't be shy if you're listening in and you're like, actually, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I know enough. You probably know more than you think. It's more about the language that you probably don't call it org design, or you don't call it a certain way. You could be a supply chain manager who's like, actually, in my supply chain, there's just, I apply lean or methods or whatever, but I'm interested to learn about different, like, other methods. Then you're welcome, and you will learn so much, and you will contribute a lot too, that other maybe traditional org design consultants or managers are unaware of. So it's for both internal, external consultants, for anyone in any function who's keen to understand how can I balance social change with technical change? How can I learn what are the different methods out there?
Yeah.
And how, what can I learn from that?
Yeah, thank you, Anissa. But going back to you, Paul, you were talking about the end-to-end structure that the class follows. And you mentioned that there are different activities. Can you give a little bit more color as to what kind of exercises people can expect? How do they work during the class?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with as simple as the organization creates a new strategy. And so in the master class, we'll present the organization and their strategy. And the strategic question is, how would we imagine deploying an organization to support that? What would need to change? How would it need to work? What would it need to be? And in small groups, people deliberate and compare notes and identify different strategic choices. And we model the process of every choice has pros and cons. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but every choice has pros and cons. And so we start with something as simple as that. We actually, if you bring your own case, then we actually model the process, and you get a subgroup of people to work with you in your situation. And we move through some of the tools and the templates that are possible in the design process, right? And so in breakout groups, you will think about, plan the change for your case, plan the steps, think about how to engage the leader. We might do a role play where one of the people in the group plays your leader, and you have to actually convince the leader to the change, right? Or to your proposal for the design process. Yeah. We in the making it real, we actually have you think about the design of a job, right? What creates meaningful work for people? And in the change, and in the case that you've got, whether it's yours or ours, the question is, how would we cluster the tasks and activities in a way that would create meaningful work? And then we talk about the choices that you've made and what the implications of that are for if we were doing this for real in a client system, right? So it's a little bit of theory and a lot of practice.
Yeah. And do you remember one of the most common ahas that you hear from participants?
You know, the biggest aha is that you don't have to have an answer, right? What Anissa and I talk about all the time is the best operating model is the one that's wholly embraced. It doesn't matter actually what the operating model is. People support what they help create, right? And so the aha is, you don't have to have perfection. You don't have to have the precise and exact answer. In truth, there probably isn't one, right? So the challenge is, how do you think content-wise, right? And the technical design choices, while at the same time bringing people into the process, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage change management while you're doing design? That's the aha.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Back to you, Anissa. So we were talking about the kind of case studies that participants could bring. What are some of the problems or opportunities that participants could bring as a case study that would work for the course, and that they would be better equipped if they do that?
Yeah, it could be a combination of things, but let me just try to focus on two elements. So it could be a tangible problem or challenge and an intangible one. The intangible one, sometimes, not all the time, could be the understream sort of behavioral. Why does something not work when actually it should be working? Like technically everything ticks the box. We have the best structure, design, we have the best we have the sort of clear KPIs. Why is it not really working? So what is that intangible thing that doesn't make the desired state stick. So it could be that. It could be a recurring challenge, something that constantly comes back. It could be pretty much anything. Or, for example, an opportunity. Like how can we expand our business, or what are the things we need to think about when we want to expand, or especially now with AI, for example, how can we prepare ourselves adopting AI in the context of org design? So there's so many things, and the cool thing I find about org design is that, I mean, it is kind of an old catch term. And to back to Paul's point earlier, it's like language is such a subtle but still very important thing. Across Europe, you can use different terminologies and they mean different things or the same things. And so it's about like what do we mean? And the cool thing about org design is, because it's such an old catch term, any issue or any challenge or opportunity that arises in an organization could fit into a case study that you could bring in, and we will dissect it, and we will, look at it from different angles together as a community of the cohort.
The thing that Anissa is saying, I'll say slightly differently, is design is a little bit like peeling an onion. And so some of the cases that we've had are very strategic, right? We just bought a business, or we've never had a headquarters organization, a global entity. And so how do we imagine something on a global scale, right? On the day-to-day, it could be, how do we align and create teams? How do we ensure that the handoffs and the boundaries between them are good? So it could be as simple as, we need to create multi-skilling, we need to bring multiple talents to the party. What would be the ways to do that? That's a design question. Or it could be, we're implementing a new enterprise architecture and nobody's paying attention to the human system design implications of that. And we've had both extremes, to Anissa's point.
Yeah, that's true. So on that, Paul, what advice would you give prospective participants to help them make the most out of this masterclass?
Ask it again.
So what advice would you give prospective participants to get the most out of this masterclass?
I mean, I think it's back up a half a step. The practice and the profession of org design is made up of people who come from many, many disciplines: psychology, sociology, organization theory, HR business partners, organization development, and so I think the advice is be open, pick as many brains as you can, right? Not just Anissa and mine, to her point earlier about there's a lot of smarts in these master classes. And I think it's bring all of your questions. I mean, we have a design for each of the modules, but Anissa and I we're very emergent in our way of working, and so if people have burning questions, it's come with your questions and be ready to have a good discussion about them. I think that's the way to get the most out of it.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Anissa? And I will also ask if there are any mindset shifts that you hope participants walk away with.
So I had an alumni of a masterclass a few years ago, fairly recently, reaching out saying, "What did you do to me? I can't unsee. I can't unsee things anymore." Looking at what he meant was, looking at things from a systems perspective, like an overall holistic perspective in an organization when there problems occurred. And so that's just building on what Paul said. In terms of mindset shift, I don't think I can really answer that question, if I'm very honest with you, because I don't know whether the mindset shift is necessarily the objective for me personally. I think for me personally, this masterclass is really about just going on a journey and learning to look at maybe the same things that you have looked at, whether it is your organization, your project, or past projects or past organizations. Just looking at it from the perspective of, let me look at it through other glasses that I've never put on before. Let me be open-minded to do that and see
Exactly.
whether it changes my perspective. And
Yeah.
so if that is a mindset shift, great. But it doesn't have to. It does. That's for me. That's not the purpose. For me, the purpose is more. Let's show you different ways of looking at it, and if that shifts your mindset, so be it.
Yeah. Okay. The important thing is to come open and learn. And it's true that it's not only from faculty members, but it's the learning also from other participants. Okay, I will go close to wrapping up, and I want to ask you a question more about your style. And I'll start with you, Paul. So, what is your professional or the impact of your professional background on the way you teach and how you approach
That's a
Org
great
Design
question.
today?
Well, I am a practicing theoretician. Let me say it that way. I'm a practicing theoretician, which essentially means that I'm a practitioner whose work is founded in good research, right, and in good theory. And so the way I approach design is why? Why would we do that? And the why should have a good theory or good research behind it. It's not subjective, judgmental, my opinion. It is my opinion based in some facts, some theory, some framework, right, that I could describe. And so that's the way I approach the work, right? And that's the way I approach the class. It's, you should always ask, why would you do that? Right? What's the point of it? Or why are you deciding that's the right way over another way? Why A versus B? And I think that's, so I'm grounded in theory, but I'm a practitioner, which means all good theory should be tested. Where you discover the why is you experiment and you test. Right? So I experiment, I test, I'm open to different possibilities, but I'm always looking for the underlying, what's the rationale? Why are we proposing this? Why does that make more sense than something else?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Anissa, how does your professional background shape the way you approach and teach Org Design today?
So I just want to clarify why I'm smiling, because when Paul was explaining just now, I was thinking of, I think this was like 5 years ago or something like that. I remember that I was on a project and I called you, Paul, and I was like, help me out. What should I do? Type of thing. And you just asked one question. I was like, oh damn, I should have thought of that. And you just asked, what's your data? Like, where did you have data? So meaning, did you think about the why? Did you gather data? Not in terms of data. Have you conducted interviews? Not that, but does the customer actually understand enough? Is there data in the room? So yeah, just to build on that. In terms of what I bring, man, I just bring good vibes. I bring passion. I bring I really love this. I really love this work. I'm very curious. Also like to go deep into different theories, but equally always ask the question, so what? Like, why should I care? People like myself who do this and help customers who don't have time to go through lots of books and articles and who maybe don't like the theories as much as I perhaps do. So I'm still in the development mode of how can I make things practical. I think that will continue to be throughout my whole career. But I like to balance, okay, we have the theory, I have passion for things, like I'm curious naturally and I want to keep learning. But how can I just ask that question, so what? Who cares? And why should you care? and bring that to life. So yeah.
I mean, I mean, we have one last point. Because I'm a theoretician practicing, I am sometimes more conceptual than practical, and so, it forces, the questions force me to get more practical, right? About the why of it. And I have a million stories. I'm a storyteller. If you come to this masterclass, you'll hear lots of stories over the 8 weeks. If you get bored with them, you tell me to shut up and I can stop. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually, that's a really good addition. You are a storyteller, and with very good humor as well. And it's just, I'm very excited for the cohort because they're gonna enjoy it. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure. I am sure. I'm looking at the time. I think we need to wrap up. I asked many of the questions that I collected over the past week or so. I will just ask if there's anything else that you'd like to add before I just remind everybody of the dates of the class. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, what are you excited about for this particular cohort?
That's right. You get to do this with us. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm excited to do this with both of you. I love planning these master classes, how involved I get. I love all the quality time that I get with all the faculty members. I think each cohort is special. There are different backgrounds, and that makes it very rich. It's learning. We all continue learning, right? Faculty members and participants, and I also like that it's a community that stays close together even beyond the masterclass, beyond the 8 weeks. I'm going to wrap up saying that we're going to start on January 6th, and we'll go 8 Tuesdays, and we can see the link right there on the bottom of the screen. So open enrollment is happening right now. So please reach out directly to me, to EODF through the website if you have any questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Looking forward, very, very forward to this. So
Yeah, same.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Anissa.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lillian.
Bye-bye.